Hello everybody and welcome to the March edition of the EPALE webcast. Let's get started with some news from the EU. An exciting new initiative has just been published by the European Commission. It's a communication on the Union of Skills, which is accompanied by an action plan on basic skills and a STEM education strategic plan. A couple of new elements that I'd like to highlight for you. There's something new called a Choose Europe facility, and that's designed to encourage highly skilled people to come to the EU. And there's also a European Skills Intelligence Observatory, and that's going to generate data and foresight so that we can have an early warning about skill shortages in critical or strategic sectors. Now, the 2025 Conference on AI Against Hate and Misinformation is organised by the European Association for Local Democracy, and it's going to take place in a few days' time. It will feature preliminary results of the Hate-Demics project. That's an initiative developing innovative tools to detect, analyse and counter harmful narratives, while at the same time fostering ethical and inclusive digital spaces. Discover more on the EPALE website. Speaking of the EPALE website, I'd like to highlight a couple of really great articles that we think you're going to enjoy. From Lebanon to India, women are challenging social norms through educational initiatives that provide skills, knowledge, and economic independence. But despite progress, challenges remain, especially in digital access. You can find out more in this blog post on the EPALE website that's designed to celebrate International Women's Day on the 8th of March. Moving now to the green transition, we know it needs a huge effort to reskill and upskill people within Europe. But what can the adult learning sector provide to help with this? How can educators increase the key competences of adult learners? Again, you can find out more about this on a blog post by Chrysanthi Karatsari, which is called Helping Adults Build Skills for a Sustainable Future. Now, staying on the issue of gender that we talked about earlier, yes, progress has been made, but we're still very far from gender equality in the EU. Women still experience lower employment rates with lower average salaries and pensions. And yet, at the same time, women do 75% of unpaid work and domestic care work. And there's a great article by Viola Pinzi on how gender mainstreaming done well, and I emphasize that, can increase the opportunities for women to improve their employability. Now, check out your calendar because we've got two great events happening on the 9th of April. In Prague, the EPALE 2025 Czech-Slovak Conference on Artificial Intelligence in the World of Adult Education will take place. On the agenda are legal and ethical aspects of AI, the impact on the labour market and AI for lecturers, and many more topics. Just hopping over the border in Vienna, there will be an EPALE and Erasmus Plus conference on AI in adult education. There you can expect some great keynote speakers and a range of interactive workshops. If they sound interesting for you, you can find out more information about both of those workshops on the relevant EPALE national websites, and we're putting the links for you. Now let's meet our guest for today, Kremidas-Courtney. They're a fellow at the European Policy Centre and the Geneva Centre for Security Policy, a senior advisor at Defend Democracy, and the author of a newly published book called The Rest of Your Life, 5 Stories of Your Future. Chris, welcome. So my first question is, do we understand the extent to which AI is embedded in the way public and private sectors operate? And what does that mean for governance and democracy?
You know, it's a great question. I think, we're living in an age when you apply for a job and your CV gets sorted out by an AI before any human sees it. Governments are relying on AI-enabled decision-making technology to decide who gets social welfare payments, decisions on housing, decisions on police and other justice engagements. And so, we have this sort of AI-mediated interaction with the government now, and I have to wonder how democratic that is. And if it was this anything we chose as a democracy. On the governance issue, I think we have this awesome technological power that's in the hands of very few people, and often not just our government, but our information is also accessed by these private companies that supply the AI and control the algorithms. But I think AI is obviously shaping our future, but we have the power to shape how. And one thing is that technology always emerges in the hands of the few, and then we spend decades trying to democratize it. This is with the computer, pick a technology. This is always the history, from the first, person who made an axe out of stone. Whoever controlled that had more, they had control of it, the few, and in the hands of the few, and then we had to democratize it. And I have to wonder, what if we instead chose to democratize technology from the start? I'd really like to explore, and how could we co-imagine citizens, policymakers, and experts coming together to determine what democratic technology looks like so that we can democratize things from the start?
Thanks, Chris. I think that's a really important concept, which is that citizens come together and highlight what their values are, and then demand that policymakers take those values and build it into the environment that is shaped for AI and not by AI. So with this great vision, how do you see that adult education community, like the EPALE community? What's their role in this?
Well, I think adult education in the EPALE community and adult education writ large, I think, can play a decisive role in how we address this issue. And going back to my last response, I think I could build on it here. And let's just look at the damage done by social media to our democracies. The technology arrives, no one's ready for it. Policymakers aren't ready for it. We kind of learn as we go, and only until a lot of damage is done do we ever really address it. And so, we didn't get the Digital Services Act or Digital Markets Act or the AI Act in Europe until a lot of damage had been done. And so I think one thing that adult education could do that's so important is to help us to educate people so we can have these informed debates. We're having the informed debate after the damage is done. And I think we'd be better if we found a way to have the informed debates before technology arrives or while it's in development, and explore those things. And I think adult education can educate people to ask the right questions of our members of parliament so that we'll be ready for these things. Adult education can not only educate people, but can even host these debates in our local communities, where I think that we always think national, but so much of this needs to come from the bottom up. The questions of the system need to come from the bottom up in every town, in every village, in every prefecture. And if we can, and I think adult education can encourage adults to learn about it so we know what questions to ask. Questions like, how can we guarantee a just transition for workers with the arrival of AI? How can we prevent people from being left behind? And more importantly, from the foundational level, how can we work together to retool our education system so that people can learn to partner with AI rather than be replaced by it? And I think if we took steps like this, we would have a lot less fear about the future. People would be leaning in and engaged, and people would feel like they had more of a stake in their future. My personal mantra is that people support what they help to create. And I think this is something that applies here. And I think adult education can play a pivotal role in doing this.
Thanks, Chris. I think that was a really great image that you gave us, particularly, I think, because if you ask people what their concerns are and what they're really worried about, it's things like climate changes, economic security, it's peace, and these are the kinds of issues that we would want as citizens. These are our values. This is what we want AI to help us solve. And instead, AI is very much being used to sort of run services in an efficient way. And part of what you're talking about, this democratic technology, is about saying, well, if we have these amazing, powerful tools, they should be put to work at our service to the kinds of things we care about that add value and make our communities and lives worth living. So thanks for giving us real food for thought. And I know this year, AI is going to be one of the key topics at our conference, big annual conference in October. So I'm sure we'll pick up these issues further. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
That's it for our webcast. See you next month. I'm going to let you know in advance it's going to be a really special webcast because we are celebrating 10 years of the EPALE Adult Learning Community. And of course, the platform, the EPALE community, is a space for connection, empowerment, inspiration, and exchange. So next month, we'll be celebrating all of that. Thanks very much. See you soon.